Okay, let's talk about the wide receivers and the guys at the top of our half PPR rankings right now. Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Calvin Ridley. I'm going first. Calvin Ridley. I have him number one, which is aggressive, but I'm assuming no Julio Jones because of the hamstring injury. He didn't practice at all last week, and so I'm kind of skeptical that he's going to play this week. So right now, projecting he does not play. I think that means Ridley gets a ton of targets, and I'm not sure that Carlton Davis can keep up with him. Now, Davis is a good cornerback, but we saw him get absolutely decimated by Tyreek Hill. And that's not to say that Ridley is like Tyreek Hill, but I think he's faster than Carlton Davis, faster as a wide receiver than what Carlton Davis typically deals with. So I still think it's an okay situation for him. And really, this is all about the volume. In his 5 career games without Julio, Ridley has 10.8 targets per game and 102.2 yards. In his 16 career games with 8 targets, and this is coming from a tweet by old friend Ian Hartitz, in 16 career games with 8+ targets, Ridley has 1,679 yards and 15 touchdowns. I think Ridley is, as long as Julio is out, is very likely to have at least a floor of 8 targets. And with that, we've just seen him historically crush. So even with the tough matchup going against the Buccaneers, I still think it's a pretty good spot for him. So I am on Ridley all over this week, as long as he is playing without Julio Jones. Sean, who do you like this week?
I really like Brandon Ayuk this week and going forward with Deebo Samuel out for potentially the rest of the season. So I think Ayuk's going to be a target monster this week at Dallas. He saw 16 targets last week for 10 catches and 119 yards. So he's wide receiver 16 for me, and I feel like I'm holding back on his projections a bit. Who knows? Later in the week, he may crack the top 12. We'll see. And the other guy is Tyrone Johnson, potentially wide receiver 3 flex play this week against the Raiders. We'll have to see. But Mike Williams, he was he had to leave the game early due to a back injury. I think the fact that the Chargers play on Thursday increases the chances Mike Williams won't be ready this week. So Tyrone Johnson, he looked really, he's looked good all season, just as the deep threat. It seems like every other week he catches 1 pass for 50 yards. But when he replaced Mike Williams, he ran a very complete route tree. He saw 6 catches for 55 yards and a touchdown. So I think this is a great spot against the Raiders. I think Justin Herbert's going to bounce back. And Tyrone Johnson, he has a super high ceiling. So, if you're an underdog in your fantasy playoffs and you just need to dart throw at wide receiver, you could certainly do worse than him in deeper leagues. But again, we'll have to see if Mike Williams is ruled out. But I think he's worth just a bench stash for now until we find out.
Raybon, who are you high on?
So going back to targeting the Texans defense, this time with T.Y. Hilton. Hilton's finally starting to come alive late in the season, which is good to see. But we know he loves playing Houston. Now, he probably loves playing Houston a little more in their building. We're in Indianapolis, but either way, you're not going to have weather concerns. And in 17 career games against the Houston Texans, Hilton's averaging 5.5 catches for 97 yards and 0.65 touchdowns per game. And this is a very exploitable Texans defense. They're giving up the 6th most schedule adjusted receiving yards per game to number 1 wideouts at 82. And they rank 31st against the position. If you want to consider Hilton the number 2 and Pittman the number 1, well, Houston also ranks 30th against number 2 wide receivers. This is just a bad defense. So I have Hilton finally inside the top 30 again this year. I think you can start him as a wide receiver 3.
Yeah. I mean, the Texans without number 1 cornerback, Bradley Roby, and then also without their top perimeter backup in Phillip Gaines. So they are especially thin at the cornerback position right now. And one of the things I always love is after, like, this happens without question, like every time after T.Y. Hilton plays the Texans, someone will go into Wikipedia and change his profile and say that he's the owner of the Houston Texans. It's simple, but so good. All right, Raybon, totally with you there on the Hilton call. Who is someone that you are low on for week 15?
So I'm still going to go with, I still think DeAndre Hopkins at the fourth highest priced wide receiver is a little bit high. I know Philly's had their struggles lately covering some of the top wide receivers, but Hopkins has just been so, up and down this year. Like he'll give you a game like he had last week against the Giants for, 9 for 136. But he's also given us a lot of kind of shaky, barely getting to double digit points in PPR type of situation. So I think that's a little bit high for Hopkins there at the fourth highest priced receiver. And okay, that's it for now.
All right, Sean, who are you low on?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm low on DK Metcalf because he's my wide receiver 5, but certainly in DFS, nothing terrifies me more than fading DK Metcalf in GPPs. But I think this week at 8,600 against the Washington football team, I think it is warranted. I'm just a bit worried about Russell Wilson in this matchup. Chase Young is playing out of his freaking mind right now. So I think this is a game where Wilson could potentially be sacked 4 to 6 times. So he might not have the time he needs to, hit Metcalf for a couple deep balls here. Could be a more quick passing attack. Maybe Tyler Lockett gets more involved. But I think if I had to pick 1 week to fade DK Metcalf, it'd be this week. But if he goes for 10 catches and 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, I will be the least surprised person on earth. And then the Rams receivers, Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, I'll probably be fading them as well. They're both around 7K. And, they're typically, one of the highest floor ceiling combos in the league. I love playing in them in DFS. But, this week against the Jets, you've talked about it, Freeman. I could see the game plan just being, let's get Cam Akers the ball and move on to Seattle next week. So I don't think they're going to want to be too creative and give anything away against their huge matchup against Seattle in week 16. So this could be a pretty vanilla run heavy, just boring offense this week. So I'll be staying away from Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods.
Okay, one guy I am low on, and I'll just be honest, I'm perpetually low on him. Like we've talked about him for years on the show. Keenan Allen, just always low on him. I have to admit, he has a great matchup on Thursday Night Football, going against the Raiders in general, and then Lamarcus Joyner in particular in the slot. Great matchup. It's just the splits with Eckler are concerning. Without Eckler this year, he's had 84.7 yards per game, 0.83 touchdowns per game. With Eckler, those numbers dropped to 66.7 yards and 0.43 touchdowns. Since Eckler returned in week 12, Eckler has a 23% target share. Allen has a 22% target share. He's being out targeted by the running back on the team. Before Eckler's return, Allen had a target share above 30%. So because he's not targeted downfield, Allen really needs heavy target volume. And with a reduced market share, I have to knock him down. He's still a wide receiver too. He could still have a great week, but I just feel without that unreal target volume that he was getting with Eckler on the sideline, he has a lower ceiling than he previously had. So that's my take on Allen, and I look forward to being very wrong on Thursday night. Sean, give us the player prop for wide receivers.
I'm going to go with A.J. Brown because I seem like I'm low on his receiving yards almost every single week, and it's burned me on Fantasy Pros, the ranking contest. So this week, they face Detroit. They're huge favorites. I'm not expecting much volume, but I'm still expecting him to go off. So I'm curious to hear where you guys are on his receiving yards. But right now, I have him at 76.5.
I will take the over, but I have it at 79.5. So really, really close.
Yeah, I'll go over too, but I have it at 79. So that's right. That's right where you expect. I think Detroit, as much as I like, I can't ever say this guy's name, but Oruwariye, their corner, I don't think he's going to be able to cover A.J. Brown. They're number 24 in DVOA versus number 1 receivers. They are 24th in schedule adjusted yards allowed to number 1s at 75 per game. So right in that range, in that 75 to 80 range, I think is where you'd expect most receivers against Detroit. And they're 30th in pass DVOA. So with Brown, it's, he usually makes these big plays after the catch. So Like even when he gets 4 receptions, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to have like 40 or 50 yards. So yeah, I'm going closer to 80.